We're live-ish.
And we are live now, fully live.
Fully live. Okay. Hail cheaters. Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh Landon, here with Brandon K. Brandon, how are you?
I'm good, Josh. We've got a lot to talk about. You coming off your wild card. I think I had this idea that I would like kick things off with a little Haaland talk. But I feel like we'd alienate like some very sensitive listeners right off the bat. I mean, has the time come for everyone just to make peace with Erling Haaland? Are we there yet?
I mean, it's a weird week for it, right? Because he's now in the, it'll be what? It was 9 goals in the first 4 matches. And yet I am actually planning not to captain him this weekend in place of a player who blanked this last weekend. So it is a little odd, isn't it? Like, it's just a funny thing because I do feel like he's kind of like breaking the Premier League. I thank goodness Arsenal won today. Just
Yes, right.
regardless of your thoughts on the North London Derby and like fandom aside, right? Like, it kind of feels like if Arsenal lost that, like the title might have already been kind of. I don't know. People like hate when I say this. It's very interesting actually because it's a real American versus British thing in my experience. Like Americans, we operate in a place of like this is. Like as sports fans, at least, like this is. It's actually funny because I feel like the British national character in general is kind of wry,
very defeatist, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly, kind of sarcastic. But when it comes to sports or sport, as they say, take off the S, there's sort of a feeling like hope springs eternal. And if I say stuff like the Premier League is over 4 weeks in, there'll be people who get extremely mad at me for saying that, right? Whereas in America, it's sort of like a thing you do, right? Like the Tigers. Or was it a better example? Like the Lions lost today, right? Like this is what happened in the NFL, right? So they're 1-1, and so as a Lions fan, you're like, well, season's over. I guess we're not a Super Bowl contender this year. That's just the way you talk, about sports, and it's sort of whether you're trying to,
you have to go to the extreme, right? Yeah, right. And to make yourself sort of feel better, you go to the extreme, like. Maybe it is outlandish that I'm saying that the Lions season is over. Maybe I'm overstating it. Therefore, the Lions season isn't over. It's sort of a reverse jinx.
Exactly. And it's like you're not even in the moment. It's not a conscious thing, right? I sort of I really actually hate the intentional reverse jinx. I have been accused of this before on our Twitter feed, but to me, the reverse jinx only works if you're truly not trying to do it, right? If you are genuinely in a place of, usually it's like a place of anguish, like FPL related anguish, where you're like, nope, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to get anything out of whatever, X player this week. And then you get the glorious return.
Like George Costanza said, it's not a lie if you believe it.
Exactly.
So that's where you're at with the reverse jinx. All right. So, I think it was a very international breaky sort of game week. And I think basically just looking at the past completion of Mo Salah is that post-international break feeling in a nutshell. It was crazy watching him and many other players in Liverpool's. Szoboszlai was having this issue as well. And this was it was just a very underbaked performance by Liverpool, but credit to Forrest. Aina will probably have for me had the best performance of the weekend. He was unbelievably good in that Liverpool match, and at 4.4 suddenly I'm Aina curious.
I mean, we talked about Forrest a little bit like right before the internet. I guess it was like our pod after game week 3 before the international break, and about how we thought they could give Liverpool a little bit of trouble this upcoming weekend, just because there's a lot of quality on that. Like, it's a team that's, for all of the kind of, they felt like they were like a kind of proto Chelsea a couple of years ago, right? Where it was like they just kept adding more and more players to the squad, but it's sort of like they kind of shed the ones that didn't work, and they found a combination that does. And I think it's quite a easy team to like now. But I thought I agree. I mean, I actually was surprised that Szoboszlai got the full 90. I guess there's not like a fantastic replacement for him, maybe, but I thought he was terrible. I thought he had a really poor match, and the announcers felt that way too. It was like everyone agrees. Yeah, everyone agrees. Not a great match. No, the real comedy of that match was Diaz and Jota both getting subbed at the same time, and Jota taking 10 seconds faster to get off the pitch, which meant that Jota got off the pitch at 59:57, and Diaz got off at 60:07 or whatever it was. And
it was like Jota had ordered an Uber from the center circle and was like, exactly. I got to keep my 5-star rating, and I can't keep this guy waiting.
Yeah, it was brutal because you saw it. It's such a fantasy moment because you saw the 3 players lined up, right? And when they show them all lined up, and so they're right by the 5th official, right? And so it's gonna come, or 4th official, whatever it is, the official. What is it? Is it the 4th or the
4th
5th?
official? Yes,
4th official, right?
Because you got the 2 linesmen, I guess, would be 2 and 3, and then the on-field ref.
Right. So you have the 5th official and. Oh, I got, yeah. What am I thinking? Like the 5th element? I don't know where I am. Yeah. So 4th official, they're lined up, and so you see that, and you're like, okay, and you kind of already knew, like, Salah's not leaving the pitch, right? It's like it's got to be Jota, and then you're like, yeah, maybe Diaz as well, and then they kind of, I think they actually even announced, so the announcers knew the change, that they knew what was happening. So you see the ball in play, right? And so you're like, all right, we just need an extended stretch here where the ball doesn't go out of play.
A little bit of head tennis, maybe.
Yeah, and it was like it's so funny. I remember this so well from yesterday, and it was like, and I think Forrest got the ball, and somebody on Forrest immediately uncorked like a 35-yard screamer that missed the net by 27 feet, and at that point it was like 39-22, and I was like, well, like there's no way we're getting this. Like these guys had to be like at the extreme end of the pitch for this.
Right. Very, very fraught too, because Bradley was coming on, and so there was an assumption that Trent might be coming off clean sheet. Then he stays on, and you must be thinking, great, we'll lock in the clean sheet in. And
well, I don't know about locking the clean sheet, but certainly I was like, at least I get more chances. And now I get Trent in midfield, right? But no, in the end, he ended up with exactly 1 point. Yeah. He could have gone at 59, or he could have gone off at the end. Either way, he ended up with a 1-pointer. Just a weird match from Liverpool. It does feel like I was listening to like the Totally Football show or something like that, and they were actually like, the worry now is they were almost too good in the first 3 matches, and it gave people a sense that they might be further along in the kind of restart or retooling, whatever you want to call it, with Klopp out. And I think I mean, it's hard to say, right? Because in some ways this team is fundamentally the same as last year, right? I mean, who would even be the kind? I mean, like some players are more bedded in, I suppose, but even Szoboszlai was there last year, right?
I can't think of a single player in the starting lineup who was a new signing
yesterday. Yeah, exactly. So, so I don't know. It's sort of the real issue for me, and I've shared my screen here, although actually, I'm on the transfers page for some reason. I think I was literally just absentmindedly hitting buttons as I was talking to you. I wildcarded in all these Liverpool players, and it really obviously didn't work out. If I had just gotten the clean sheet, I would have felt okay about it, right? But
I did think Trent had a pretty good game, all things considered, and he is in the zone clearly right now. He had a great international break, and there was a corner in which he went for goal. Basically, he went for an Olympico, and he was like well within his rights because he's just so dialed in. So as far as shelling out the money for Trent, you still have to feel pretty good about that.
I mean, I don't feel good about it because it didn't work out, and I wildcarded out of a better team so like, sure, I have these players now, like maybe eventually they'll be good.
Quickly run through the team for people listening.
No, I think it's fine. I have Konsa stunk, lost the clean sheet right away. Trent got 1 point. Robinson lost it like the 90th minute and 30. Like 90 plus 3 or something like that. It was like the last boot of the game, basically. Lost his clean sheet. Henderson, conceded 2 to Leicester.
Awful performance.
Yeah, it kind of feels like Leicester are just going to score 1 or 2 in every single match. They might. I honestly feel like unless they get a point penalty, like a massive one, I think they're probably going to end up staying up this year because they just have enough. Like they can score goals. I always. This is just like my rule of thumb, which is that if you have a bunch of teams that are all kind of near the bottom of the Premier League table, and like any one of those teams that they're capable of scoring goals is going to be the team that stays up versus the other ones.
Well, it ain't Southampton, I can tell you that much.
No, poor Southampton. It's like they almost feel like an example of a team that got promoted like a year too early. It's like they weren't quite. It's like sometimes it isn't good news to get. I mean, obviously it's good news from like a bottom line standpoint, but as a fan, and honestly, I'm not even from a bottom line standpoint. You could argue that there's a case for waiting, like trying to keep your powder dry or something like that, right? I mean, there's always the risk that you just don't ever get up, right? And that is so you always have to, of course, go all out to get promoted. But it does feel like there are times when it's like you need to go back down to the championship, reset, right? Like, I mean, Fulham, we talked about this before, but like Fulham, like it was like the third time was the charm with them, right? Like, and it seems like they have a lot of stability now.
It's a real alchemy, particularly when you're working with a lot of lone players, and there's you have to have some level of continuity in addition to some elements of luck, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like when we looked at your wildcard team, when we did our Patreon pod on Thursday night, I was struggling to find any issues with it. I thought it looked really strong in every position. Decent rotations, no real weaknesses. I mean, Matt Turner as your backup goalkeeper is the only guy who's probably not going to get 90 in this lineup.
Totally. And I so I rolled out a 3-5-2. I got blanks from every one of my defenders, my goalkeeper, and every one of my midfielders. An 0 for 9 from those. And one of my starting forwards didn't play, João Pedro. And I sort of lucked out because I definitely lucked out because Johan Wissa came on, scored 24 seconds into the match, got 2 bonus, even though he was subbed off in the 45th minute. So, so that feels like a stroke of good fortune. And kind of and then of course I had Haaland and captain him. So all told, I wild carded and I'm down like 550,000 spots. So clearly, a disaster, but it's like a house. It's like, it's like buying an old fixer upper. I like the bones of this wild card. It's got good bones. So I just need it to turn into, points eventually. But yeah, it's a bummer. I'm 4 weeks in now. I'm, 1.5 million overall. And I think the worry now is this another season like last season where I feel like I like the team that I've put together, and then every week, it all goes,
right. You just end up treading water, really.
Yeah, exactly. But it's way too early to think that. I know I was talking earlier about being pessimistic, and but I don't feel overly pessimistic. I just, Rodgers again. It's like another match where he looks good, but I mean, there's nothing happening with him. He's not. I don't know. It's like I don't know. Forgive me if I'm mentioning this again on the podcast, but there's this TikTok feed I like where it's all of these. They're all like French guys, I think, and they all take turns scoring. Like they all kind of like it's like they all do. It's like it's like a kind of challenge, right? And so it'll be like top bins, and then it'll be like 2-touch volley, and if you get it, you get a check mark. If you don't, you get a net, whatever, right? And so these guys, it's like no one in the world is better at hitting the crossbar or the post than these guys, right? And it's like they're incredible at it. Occasionally they do go in, but they are masters at accidentally, hitting the crossbar but getting so close. And it's like, but it's like they're all just these dudes, and it's like it almost feels like the difference between these TikTok guys or like the Premier League guys is like the Premier League guys somehow know how to get it in, It's like it's sort of, and I'm just like, it's Morgan Rogers. Like if you were capable of scoring, you should have scored by now. I don't know. It's like at some point, like it's more than just bad luck, right? It's like he's kind of, I don't know. It's like the Gabriel Jesus thing. Like, is Gabriel Jesus on a 10-year run of not being able to convert chances, or is it just that he's not very good at scoring? I don't know.
Morgan Rogers, like, to beat another metaphor to death, feels a little bit more like when you first get the new FIFA video game and your virtual pro just has like no skills and you have to slowly build them up. Like Morgan Rogers, like his aim was either directly at the goalkeeper or off to the side. There was a great moment where he could have just teed up Ollie Watkins for a tap in, and the pass was just so off the mark. So he had a
one-on-one. He had a one-on-one. He couldn't convert. Weird match for Watkins too. I mean, he has the brace. First goal he scored, I thought, was a really good goal. Second one was I suppose a bit lucky, right? It sort of, I think it takes a touch off the defender and kind of loops right into his path. And he almost couldn't miss with the second goal. And then but then he missed some like really big chances. And then is it Duran or Duran?
Duran.
Duran. Duran comes on and scores a great goal. We actually had a lot of great goals this whole weekend. I was watching the highlights from the. I had some play date related responsibilities today, so I couldn't watch the Newcastle Wolves game.
But Harvey Barnes, incredible.
Yeah, but all three of the goals were great. Every single one of the goals scored in that match was fantastic.
Yeah.
Because even the Wolves goal was great because I had this great kind of like a kind of dummy on the goal. It was really cool. So this is sort of, there was a question that we had for this week's pod. I think I had it down at the bottom, but it's Jimmy Rogdog Town asked what I'm enjoying about this FPL season so far. And I would say, again, for me, what I enjoy is watching the Premier League, and then fantasy is like it's like the thing that I sweat through in order to get, it's like, I would say from a fantasy perspective, it's more, it's like, I'm not always having a great time from a fantasy perspective. Right. From a like watching the matches perspective, I am almost always having fun. Like yesterday, there's so much going on. It's very stimulating. It's really fun. And if I didn't have fantasy, I would, I just don't think I'd be, was watching as much, right? It's like I wouldn't be carving out the time for it. But it really does bring me a lot of joy watching these matches every day, every weekend. It's a blast.
FPL is like somebody in a dark alley that's like, hey, buddy, you like watching Premier League? Well, have you ever watched Premier League like this?
Right, exactly.
It's just like,
have you ever, smoke this and watch the Premier League? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of true. I mean, from an actual FPL perspective, I mean, this is a bad week for me to answer that question. I think, the thing I always love in fantasy, like everybody, I think, is to have, have players that nobody else owns who deliver. And so I did have a little version of that. I had Johan Vissa this week, and I'll take those 7 points, and that'll be my little bit of joy this week for my own squad. Beautiful. Right? Is the Vissa bench boy. So I will stop talking about my team now. Why don't you talk about yours? Because it's funny actually, because I was thinking about this earlier today and how I was like, I'm going to say something to Brandon. It's going to sound insulting, but I don't mean it this way, or not completely at least. But I think that you really, like, this week you showed the benefits of sitting on your hands, right? There are times when making no decision is the best decision, right? And I think that that's something that you that you can, first I was like, did you get 70 points this week? I was like, dang.
I ended on 55 points. So you and I talked on the main pod last week, and you had triggered your wild card, and I was like, go with God. That's not for me. I've got my Newcastle guys. Maybe I'll get lucky with the North London Derby. Then we talked on Thursday, and I was losing my nerve. There was the international break injuries to Odegaard, Declan Rice. I was like, what performance are we going to get out of Arsenal this weekend? Conso had this little bit of a doubt, even though he was past fit on Friday. And I just had this insane FOMO, not having a single Liverpool guy. So there was this inkling that, I was, as you said, Josh, being passive. So in fantasy, you can be one of two things. You can be patient or you can be passive. And the difference is, like, patience is I'm trusting the plan that I've set forth, and even though I'm going to be tested, let's just carry it through. And then there's passivity, where you're just not recognizing the situation that you're in. You don't make the necessary changes, and you get destroyed because of it. And I was fearful that not getting any Liverpool in particular was going to mean that I was managing passively.
Yeah. So do you think it's like an eye of the beholder thing? One man's passive is another man's patience?
Like it's a hindsight thing. I'm able to say that it was patient because it worked out for me.
That's what I mean. Leading from behind. I think that's really but now you've got two transfers, and you. I think very, very, very likely, I would say you ended up with a better squad by not making a wild card, right? Like your wild card team would not have had 55 points, would be my guess.
For sure. No, definitely not. Yeah. And like we had talked about, I was thinking of going double Liverpool defense. So like I would have just been like destroyed when that clean sheet got wiped out. Yep. So I do feel like I'm in a stronger position. Now I have to answer the question lingers of like, well, so what am I going to do with Liverpool now? I at least have the opportunity. I doesn't look like the price market is going to be really fluctuating too much this week while we've got these Champions League fixtures that are starting, and there's also the EFL Cup. So guess I'm just looking for minutes, rotation, any injury concerns with Liverpool, with Arsenal, and all these guys. What's up with Saka? I mean, I can't believe they flag. Why? What's the point of flagging Saka anymore?
It won't make a difference.
He's always being rolled off the pitch.
That is I don't want to get away from your team, but I'll just, this is a quick reminder that the European matches kick off this week. We have Aston Villa play on Tuesday away to Young Boys at the Wankdorf, as we talked about last week.
Wonderful.
And I think it'll be very interesting to see whether Watkins or Duran starts that match. I think we might see Duran start it, which would, I suppose, be good for Watkins owners. I think you'd want him to start that match. If Watkins starts at midweek, then I think we could see a Duran start on the weekend. And then Liverpool also play on Tuesday. They go to AC Milan, so. Like you said, we'll see what we see. We'll see what we see. Yeah. But I think the fact that it's Tuesday means that everyone should be fine. I would love to see Jota not start this match. That would be kind of ideal. So we'll see there. I actually I was kind of leaning towards making the Jota to Luis Diaz move, and was kind of going back and forth about it on Friday. And then I missed that Diaz was set to price rise, and it's sort of like I was like, fine. I was debating between the two anyways, and the price rise I was like, I'm not going to spend the extra 0.1 now. When it was a lateral move, I was kind of okay with it. Right. So and then Wednesday, Man City host Lille. And then Thursday, because there's no Europa League or European Conference League this week. It's all Champions League. It's spread out over 3 days. On Thursday, Arsenal go to Italy, and they visit Atalanta. And so those are all. Again, I have absolutely no idea how the scoring works this year in the Champions League. I don't know, like, if there's even a table. Like, it's not clear to me how any of this is going to work. But regardless, they're playing, and. So I think this will be it'll be a lot of fun, just from like an individual game standpoint anyway. So, but Brandon, I want you to talk a little bit more about your team, and while you do, I am going to run and get a glass of water because I'm a little parched. So I'm going to give you the free rein here for a second.
I'm going to vamp here.
All right, go for it.
Yeah. So the front line, I felt like the edge that I might have is the Newcastle away Wolves. Say what you will about Newcastle's away form. Having the double up with Gordon and Isak felt really good to me. Now, there's a huge concern with Isak. He's now flagged in the game. Eddie Howe, after the match, said that Isak mentioned he had blurry vision in the locker room at halftime, and they're not quite sure, at least at the time of this pod, what's going on with him, and hopefully it's not serious, but it's very concerning. And who knows what his fitness is going to be going into game week 5. So suddenly, is Isak to Ollie Watkins? Is Isak a make way to get cash, to make it easier to get Salah in and keep Saka? Because right now, the assumption with my team was always the easiest way for me to get Salah in is to get rid of Saka. And Saka, fitness precluding, is just in terrific form. He's returned in every game week so far. We'd love to see a few more goals from him. But I think there's no way I can drop him, even though the Man City fixture in game week 5 is really worrying. So I guess, Josh, this is I think a big piece of our looking ahead to game week 5 and potential transfers is, can we just take the City Arsenal match on the chin? In recent memory, it's been 0-0, very tetchy, not high scoring. I can't imagine. Haaland has every chance of scoring in this match. And Arsenal's performance in the North London derby was harrowing. I thought they worked their butts off.
Yes. Yeah. And then they play on, I think they're in a tough spot too, playing away in Italy on Thursday.
Yep.
Maybe you talked about this while I was
away.
Not
yet. Yeah. The schedule is brutal because then they play on Sunday in the city match. So Arteta's real challenge here is protecting some of his players who had to work really hard in the North London derby. Can't imagine Odegaard is fit for the city match because they had mentioned he's probably out for 3 weeks.
Doubtful. Yep. I
mean, at least they'll have Declan Rice back. And watching the North London derby, I thought if Rice were on the pitch for Arsenal, that they would perhaps even have greater control. I mean, maybe what's to discuss is what's going on with Ange Ball and why has it just not been working for the last 6 months.
Yeah, I know. And it's just a weird thing with them because I continue to think they look good on the pitch. And I can't tell if that's if it's just an aesthetic thing. I just enjoy watching this version of Spurs play, and yet you're right. I mean, the results are not there, right? It's they're playing an enjoyable brand of football, I think, but it's just not necessarily translated into a team that feels like they're even remotely close to champion, to challenging for a Champions League spot. Maybe when, if Solanke can level up. I thought he actually had some moments in the derby where he hasn't played in a few weeks, right?
Morgan Rogers did up a little bit.
He did Morgan Rogers it a little bit. That's true. Yeah.
But my small moment of joy, my Wissam moment was Emile Smith-Rowe coming off of my bench with 7 points. I had thought maybe benching João Pedro in favor of Smith-Rowe, but thought I think it's going to be a tight between West Ham and Fulham. It turned out to be the case, but heck, I will take it. And as fantasy owners of João Pedro, you'd love to see it. Not if you're a Brighton fan, but Brighton couldn't score goals. Hey, we need João Pedro. It's João Pedro's team.
Also classic Premier League, right? The classic unannounced injury, right? Just absolutely no obligation to ever. This is my biggest bugaboo, and I bring it up all the time. But it's just crazy. Why would anyone ever tell the truth? Why would a Premier League manager ever they could just go out there in a press conference on Friday and be like, "Oh, Saka's injured. He's out for 3 weeks." Saliba won't play for us again. There's no downside to that, right? What would be would you even get in trouble for that? You can literally say anything and there's absolutely no obligation because no one tells the truth. Everyone hides all of these injuries. It happens again and again. And so João Pedro has a knock. Nope. Who knew? Not us, So it's a little tricky. So what is your plan right now then? I mean, you have these 2 transfers. So presumably you're not leaning towards a wild card at the moment because
the plan was prior to this game week that I'll probably shift Saka to Salah. And now I just feel like Saka is immovable. I'm just so enamored of his form and Arsenal.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the plan is, I think the easiest move just based on knee jerk is Isak to Watkins. Or the alternative would be I can do Diogo Jota to Mo Salah if I use my second free to move Isak down to somebody who's 5.4 mil or cheaper.
Is there anybody?
Jamie Vardy?
Okay, I mean that's interesting. You can get Vardy for 5.4?
Yeah, he is 5.4. There's also Raul Jimenez, who looks like he's won. Maybe, I mean, it's one match, but I think against West Ham he offered more than I think Rodrigo Muniz has been offering at the start of the season. So Raul Jimenez is kind of interesting, but
Vardy is 5.6 by the way.
Okay.
He's gone the wrong way. I mean as well he should have risen in price. I mean he's
a Sublime song all of a sudden.
He's gone the wrong way. Can I see and we'll say it out here because I don't okay. I don't want people listening to not know, but I'm just curious what your squad. Oh, actually, no. Before you make any transfers, I'm just curious what your team looks like. What does your bus team look like right now?
Oh, sure.
Hit by a bus.
My bus team looks like this. I'm benching Emile Smith-Rowe, who's
3 flags.
Yeah. So did you see this news about Isak? I was just talking about this while you're getting
Yeah.
water, but the blurry vision. It's really worrying.
Double vision. Yeah. It's what was that song, right? Like with my double vision. Is that Foreigner?
I always think of I'm Your Huckleberry.
Oh yeah, yes, exactly.
Val Kilmer and Tombstone.
Doc Holliday. Yeah.
Yeah. So the plan, the plan could be drop Isak and get Watkins and then maybe roll another transfer. The plan could be that double move I was mentioning where Jota becomes Salah and I downgrade Isak. But I think what I like, I'm liking having this flexibility up front with a upper mid tier second forward that gives me I wonder how you're feeling because to go with the strong midfield, you can't easily get to a player like Watkins.
I mean, yeah, that is true. Although it's not impossible. I mean, but
it's two transfers, so you'd have to wait.
Two transfers. Yeah. And I would like to have him, but I'm like sort of okay with not having him just because of all the Champions League stuff and the fact that he now has such a quality backup option. What about another move? So just looking at your squad, I mean, I think your defense looks great, right? You've got Konsa, Porro, and Robinson back there. Henderson and goal, fine. I mean, fine, whatever. They're all bad. Every keeper's a bad, except for Ederson, who gets he got his 1 assist a season. So congrats to him for that.
Sanchez for Chelsea had a excellent game this weekend, but we don't need to talk.
About that. He did actually. That's true. Yeah, credit to him. He saved a pen and they kept a clean sheet. Although they really shouldn't have kept a clean sheet. I thought Bournemouth were I thought kind of unlucky in that one. But,
they dominated for stretches for sure. Yeah, so good with the defense.
But then in the middle you got Rodgers, who at this point, it's just like whatever. He's 5 million. Like there's no point in getting too mad about a 5 million player. It's the only joke is that we keep starting him in the face of these returns. But I mean, like you got Smith Rowe on the bench. Like I'd actually probably play Smith Rowe over Rodgers.
I feel like that's pretty obvious. I'm going to make that switch right now. I agree.
Yeah, I guess your bus team had him on the bench last week, so that's probably what it was. I mean, I actually think in some ways could you move Gordon down to a 4.5-ish player and then turn Jota into Salah?
Yes, I believe I can do that. I have 2.4 mil in the bank. Let's just try that for fun. If I move Jota to Mo and I drop Gordon, how much do I have in the bank? I have 4.6.
So that's actually not bad. I mean, it's like, I mean, you could get a player who actually starts at least at 4.6, like not like just a straight up, like someone who moved to, Saudi Arabia or something, and they're just like, red flag for the rest of the season.
Yeah. So this is the question. Different routes to Salah. Is that what I need to do? And I feel like you can't let that one performance against Forest just put you off Liverpool. Like we still have those first 3 matches in which they looked amazing, as did Salah. Just like if Salah was actually able to complete a pass against Forest, he probably looking at some fantasy returns, and I don't think we're having this conversation. So it does still feel urgent to me. It's a little bit like the Haaland thing. Like the non-Haaland owners are now having to have like real talk of just like, am I going to persist with this strategy in the face of logic? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the problem, I was just thinking about your specific team. Part of the problem with those moves we just discussed is even if you made those, you actually still have 3 flag players that would be starters, right? In João Pedro, Isak, and Saka. Now, all 3 of them should start, right? But like you're sort of like, it's like if you multiply 0.75 times 0.75 times it's like you're kind of in a position where just something's going to go wrong, and it's like, do you want to like get rid of all of your kind of cushion of bench players, So I think it's, I don't really know. I mean, that, and I can see why moving Saka now maybe does make a little less sense, because if you look at Arsenal's fixture run, if you can just survive game week 5 with Saka, right? It turns into.
Can you see this on my screen?
I can. Yeah. It turns into a spectacular trio of fixtures, right? From game weeks 6 through 8, where they host Leicester, followed by Southampton, away to Bournemouth. They're almost too good, where it's like if it was someone besides Saka, you'd worry about rotation, but Arteta refuses to rotate Saka. So we should be fine with him. And so if like in my case, my plan is to not make a transfer this week if I can avoid it, right? Like barring some Champions League injury, so that I can bring in Saka myself starting in game week 6. And so in my case, it would also be Jota that I would be shipping out to free up the cash for that.
Yeah, it's interesting what's going to happen in the midweek, and the midweek is further complicated by the EFL Cup. You've got Everton, Southampton, Brentford, Fulham, Palace, Man United, Brighton, Wolves, and Spurs all play in the EFL Cup midweek. So just have your antenna up for rotation, injury, etc. And I guess like you've pinpointed it with Watkins is with Duran in such good form. How much of a transfer target is Watkins if he starts and plays 90 in the Champions League? And I would be surprised if Watkins doesn't start in the Champions League, because this is a dream moment for his career.
Totally. I think that's right. It's an interesting squad. Like, are they? Part of me is like, I actually think they probably are good enough. Like, I mean, like, are they deep enough to like? Because for a lot of squads, especially the Champions League, but even like the Europa League for some teams, right? This kind of happened to Brighton a couple of years ago, where it's like it really can kind of upend your season, right? Because they just don't have the depth to rotate, because there's just too many, and even when they try to rotate, those can be matches that they then lose, which means then you have to play everybody, right? And then suddenly you're playing your best 11 twice a week for on and off for 3 months, right? And that's when your form tends to dip. But I think they do have enough depth. It just kind of depends on I mean, I guess the question is just how much is that? Even Morgan Rogers, right? Like, I mean, it's not like there's no reason for us to think that he's so locked in that he couldn't get rotated this coming weekend.
It's and it's almost possible. Like him being left on for the full 90 against Everton. It's sort of like Emery is like, you're not part. You could read it.
Part of the Champions League. Exactly. Let's hope, I think. All right, so let's I wanted to, because we actually had a proper game week where everything ended on Sunday. I wanted to quickly shout out the Always Cheating Super League here, Brandon. So give a quick shout out to FPL Game Week, which is the site that I it's a free plug, by the way, to FPL Game Week, but it's a site that you and I love to use. Really handy and really fun, especially for real time, like during match weeks and stuff. Sometimes I don't use it when I'm having an especially bad one. I try to avoid it, but let's read off the top 10. We actually have a tie for 10th. Doug Gorman and Ruben Hiva are in 10th. In 9th is Ala Saleh. Hope I got that right. And 8th is Tor Charlesworth. Again, one of the reasons I love reading out the Always Cheating Super League is you realize that we have a truly international audience. The fact that I cannot pronounce half of the names in here is warms my heart in many ways, because it makes me feel like we really have people from all over who listen to the podcast. In 7th is Liam Buckley. Nice, proper. I don't know. Liam. I guess Liam could be Irish or British, right? Like it's sort of
I don't know, like Congolese. We just don't know.
That's true. Why am I doing weird name? Like I don't ignore everything I just said, except for the good stuff, except for the warm my heart part. In 6th we have Shorn W Bola. In 5th is Howard Eccles. In 4th is Abu Amara. In 3rd is Niels Arv Nordbo. In 2nd is Lijesh Erangel. And in 1st, Brandon, as you probably know already, is Sundar Chemjong. And he is, or she, they are well ahead in the top of the table. They're 24th in the world right now. So congrats to Sundar, 24 in the world. That's not bad, but 24 out of 11 million managers.
And the Super League is free for all of our listeners. You just need code QVC0ND or go to alwayscheating.com, and there's an auto join button right there waiting for you at the top of the page. Real quick before we turn our attention to the fixtures of Game Week 5, if you like what you hear and you want more FPL content and you want to say thanks to what me and Josh do, go to patreon.com/alwayscheating and become a supporter of the podcast today. What you get is an extra pod and extra content every week, and that's an ad-free pod, usually Thursday nights, really close to the deadline, and it'll be really useful this week because we've got so much midweek football. There's just a whole ad-free feed for all of our episodes there. We also have a ton of mini leagues happening on our Discord, kit giveaway contests, and so much more. Big thanks to our new Patreon supporters this week, Vico Mantilla and Grant Parks. And Josh, our link is still live for fantasyfootballhub.co.uk/always if you want more data as you make some decisions going into game week 5 and beyond this season. Maybe some people are feeling like, hey, I need a little extra help right now.
Maybe you're doing I mean, you have the people who are avoiding FPL game week like me because they don't want to know how far they've tumbled. But what about the person who is having their first ever good season? They're like, I have been crud for 6 years, and I'm finally good enough that I am listening to FPL podcasts, and I need more information, and I want to kind of kick on from here, right? I want to see how far I can go. So if you do that, then you can go to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk/always and get 50% off your membership. There's a bunch of different membership levels. So, if you're not sure this golden run is going to last, Brandon, you can sign on for 1 month or you can go all in and do the full season. But there's all kinds of expert team reveals. There's also a lot of just Opta data that you can plug in. And it's really fun just to I love looking at things like heat maps. I'm not sure if they're even helpful as much as I just enjoy looking at them. It's just sort of fun to look at these things, but you can look at XG, and its kind of cousin data points. And there's just a lot of different things to take advantage of on there. There's also transfer planners. There's an AI tool. I believe that the version of the AI tool they have now, Bernie, you can actually just take a screenshot of your team, right? And import it. It's super simple and straightforward. So that's kind of fun, really nice and easy, easy way to use the site.
All right, last bit of housekeeping. Our friends at Blue Wire are giving away a couple of $500 gift cards. There's a link in the show notes to take a quick survey about how you consume ad content with your podcast. Quick and easy, and a chance to win a $500 gift card. So big thanks to Blue Wire for that. All right, Josh, game week 5. It's time to put the disaster that was game week 4 in the past.
Yes, exactly. I'm surprised that I'm not feeling more. I'm actually feeling kind of fine about how game week 4 went. It was not a good one, but I don't know. I feel like the first game week after Wildcard, it's like you look at your squad going into the game week, you always feel good about it, and it never quite works out, right? And so sometimes it's like it takes 2 weeks for a Wildcard to really settle in. And so I think that's how I'm feeling about things. And I think when it comes to game week 5, the big question, I would say argue the biggest question, right? Because it's the place where you can get double points, right? Is what do you do with Liverpool and specifically Mo Salah versus Erling Haaland, right? So Erling Haaland is, I think, masking some deficiencies in this Man City squad right now. We started to get into the top of the pod, and I think we got distracted, but it really does feel like he is so good that it's hard to even tell how good Man City are. It's very clear how good Erling Haaland is, right? And because I felt like Brentford had they could have scored 3 goals in the first half of the match.
They were not pushovers in that match for sure.
Not at all.
A couple of crazy moments, and I think by the end of the match, Brentford kind of ran out of gas, and that's the thing with City is they just have a really deep bench and can keep their foot on the gas for the entire 90 minutes.
Absolutely. And this is what unlimited money buys you. And I think that's fine, and we're not going to get into that on this,
no issues with that pod, whatsoever.
But exactly. But I do think from a fantasy standpoint, the fact that there's one player who is so good that the flaws of obviously Man City are when I say flawed, I mean that only in the sense that they haven't dropped a point this season, and maybe there's a but
you're comparing them to the heights that they hit in the last decade, basically.
Exactly. It does not feel like they are. It feels like they are maybe slightly lucky to be on 12 out of 12 to start the season. And so and I really hope, and I worry a little bit now that with Odegaard out and Arsenal playing away in Italy on Thursday, Man City play a home match in the Champions League the day before against what I was probably an easier opponent as well in Lille versus away to Atalanta. I think Atalanta's going to give them Arsenal a really tough match. I'd actually be surprised if Arsenal won that game. And so I think that it's going to be a tough. So they're going to be coming off of that. And I think it's going to be a real uphill battle for them. Does that translate into lots of returns from Erling Haaland? Well, I don't know about that, right? Like, I mean, I think that we saw with Arsenal today in the North London Derby, right? Like, Arsenal,
they know how to limit chances.
Their defense is incredible. David Raya, he had another spectacular save in this one, and it's just incredible. Like, some of the best saves I have seen from a keeper have like that. The save in the North London Derby and the save in the Villa match, just like two of the best saves this season. And so it's like even though I also think, like, just sort of organizationally they're really strong. It's a really stable back line. I mean, I guess the left back spot has had a lot of different people in there, but in general, it's like they're just so solid. And then like you said before, they have Declan Rice back. And so do I think the Man City score in this match? Yes. Do I think they score more than 2 goals? No. Right. But I think they probably do score 2. And then if they score 2, then
I see where this is going.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they score 2, then Haaland's he's gonna score one of those 2 goals, right? Yeah. And then maybe both. And so it kind of feels like, again, I like to talk about these like kind of floor ceiling things when it comes to captaincy, right? So the ceiling for Haaland, I think, would be around 13 points, right? 2 goals and 3 bonus. That's just, I mean, obviously I'm just guessing, but like, that's like a reasonable rule of thumb, I think. Heuristic, Brandon, is that's what I'm going to use for this. And but I think his floor, I guess it's a blank. I don't know. It feels hard to believe, doesn't it? Let's say I refuse to give him that low of a floor, so I'm going to give him a goal and no bonus. So his floor is 6 points. I would say his range is 6 to 13 roughly. And then if we go to Liverpool, bounce back game. Clearly, I can't imagine they'll play as poorly at Anfield again. Salah had by far his worst match of the season. He was irrelevant in the match, basically. Just a weird one from him. I don't like, he wasn't really creating chances for other people. It was just one of those weird matches. It was like one of those matches from last season where he was just like, he wasn't involved. And I'm sure he had a couple of moments, but I mean, I watched all 90 minutes of that game, and I just don't remember seeing him really like, there's always moments when they're in the box and things like that, but it just didn't feel like he like took control of that game. If anything, I thought Diaz was the one. He had that amazing moment on the touchline where it looked like the ball was going to go out and he won the ball. Like, maybe he should have passed it, but when they showed the replay, you can see he's got clear space
near post right there, and he puts it right off the post. I agree.
Exactly. Yeah. Like inside post too. It was really, really
my
close.
thoughts on Salah in that match were particularly toward the end. It felt like he was just trying to do it for him. And Mo was playing for Mo. And I think that's what has traditionally made Mo such a special player, is he's just like, I'm going to do my thing and it's going to be great. But, to be sort of conspiratorial or try to read too much into this performance, is this a pivotal moment for Arne Slot? And does he do some weird stuff? Doesn't the attitude change at Liverpool? Because Arne doesn't strike me. I'm going to call him Arne. I think that's fine. He doesn't strike me as a guy who puts up with BS, and he's trying to really exert his. This is the impression I get from his press conferences and the post-match interviews.
The impression I get. Another great song turned into a great.
Try to knock on wood. More singing on the OSG. Anyway, so I think Arne Slot's in an interesting position here, and how he response, and it's kind of like good for Liverpool and for Slot that they have the Champions League fixture to shake that rust off, deal with whatever
that's a very, you're right. And that it's sort of interesting, like in Arsenal's case, you maybe don't want this match on Thursday, but in Liverpool's case, they probably do want a chance. Like they want a big match right away, right? You want to kind of get the taste of that Forest match off of you. So I think that makes sense. And I think they're going to look a lot stronger on Tuesday. I think the big question, and the reason why everyone should be holding their transfers as long as possible this week, is Liverpool have made a couple of depth moves over the last like the last month or so of the season? Like, do we see some of these players come on? I mean, like there's some quality players on that side who have like barely played so far this season, right? Like, yeah, like Chiesa is Chiesa gotten on the, like, I think
I don't think so.
Maybe. Yeah. I was trying to like remember if he's like got
in
the Premier League at least. I don't. Yeah, he's still in zero minutes. So obviously he joined late into the window too. But yeah, so Chiesa has barely played. Darwin has barely played. Gakpo has barely played. And these are quality. I mean, Cody Gakpo is arguably, like, well, he was I would say in the first 11 of best players in Euro 2024, right? He was absolutely fantastic. He basically plays in the Luis Diaz spot, I think, when he's at his best, right? As a sort of classified as a forward actually in the game, but I think he kind of plays. I think I don't know. I think he's very strong in the left.
He likes to come from deep, right?
Yeah, and he's a Dutch player, right? So he can he's he can
do it all.
He can play anything from center back to executive forward. But you could see him, I think, starting in place of Diaz or possibly Jota. Midweek for sure. It probably deserves to, honestly. Darwin, I'm not as sure about. Like, would you roll out a Darwin Gakpo double front line? I'm assuming that Salah will start just because I can't imagine him not starting this one.
Yeah, Salah's just so fit. That's not a concern I have. He will play 90 forever, for eternity. Darwin does seem like nobody respects him at that club. For maybe some of his teammates too, but I don't think Slot's showing him a whole lot of respect. I don't think he's going to get a start now. Yeah,
I mean, Darwin's in that category. Remember those French TikTokers I was telling you about before? Sure, he's the ultimate. Oh man, this guy would kill on there. Like the way the crossbar would rattle when he was trying to score in this these challenges. Yeah. Oh my goodness, he'd knock it right off it'd tumble over, backwards. Yeah, I would love to see that actually. So I think, so what is Salah's range of returns this weekend? I think his floor would be like 5 points. Like I think he gets some kind of like an assist maybe. And I think his ceiling is pretty high, honestly. I think, a couple goals and an assist and bonus. Like I do think that like that's a possibility. Like I just think he's got a higher ceiling than Haaland does, right? This weekend. Yep. And so I think so if the floors are roughly the same and the ceiling is probably a little bit higher, if you have both of them, I think I would tip towards captaining Salah over Haaland. I don't think the argument is that strong. Like it's not open and shut, in my opinion, right? Like given Haaland's form, just given the form that he's in, you can make a case that you literally just captain him every single week. And I think never
you said those exact words earlier in the week too.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't mind that. I just think because I have Salah, it just feels silly to me not to captain him for what is so clearly an easier fixture. And he's obviously capable of returning as much as, if not more than Haaland. And so,
this is kind of an interesting question, I think, for a lot of listeners who don't have both. Yep. When you triggered your wild card, was there ever a moment in which you thought you would not have both Salah and Haaland?
No, and I wouldn't have wild carded if I didn't want Salah, right? Like the Salah was the inspiration for the wild card.
Right. So I guess the question then is, as we look at the captaincy for game week 5, if there are managers out there who don't have both Haaland, let's call it like a celebrity couple.
Yeah.
If they don't have the double up with Haaland and Salah, is this a problem going into game week 5?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, I think that like it's not like a -4, -8 like level problem. I think if you can, like in your case, you can get there, but not quite easily enough to probably justify it, right? Like given the way you just explained it to me before.
Sure. I mean, I'm weakening my team in another position to get Salah. So the math is, am I strengthening my team enough just by getting Salah in that it's worth weakening my second striker position?
I mean, honestly, if you could do it with Like if you could have still afforded Vardy, then I might have been like in favor of it.
Yeah.
Because didn't you say that you needed you had like 5.4 available?
It may be that I just misremembered how much Vardy cost. I'm going to try to make these just like see if I can make these transfers right now. I'm going to bring Vardy in for Isak.
Yep.
And then we'll see if I can afford Salah. Vardy is right there, just below Nico Jackson.
5.6.
And Jota, I have now 12.7 in the budget. And Mr. Salah, how much does he cost?
It's got to be less than that, right? 12.6.
He costs 12.7 exactly. I have exact money
so
to
you could do
Vardy
it.
and Salah. So I think that's I'm interested in it.
Yeah, 100%. And Vardy, Leicester host Everton as well. So the problem is you have exact money, but I would be really reluctant to use 2 transfers before all of the Champions League and EFL Cup matches this week, right? Like
sure. I don't want to do that
issue.
either. Agree.
Yeah.
So but it may be a Gordon downgrade situation in that case.
Right. That's true. Yeah. But I do think that I think we should be probably talking a little more about Vardy as a third forward option. I just think that he is. I honestly thought he was washed, and now I'm not so sure. I don't know. Like, I mean, it doesn't feel like he should be able to keep it up, right? Like he's 36 or something like that, and he is clearly the. It's like he's like in one last ride territory, right? Yeah. It's like this is it, This is like the
he's 37. He'll turn 38 this coming January, so he'll be 38 before the season's out.
It's amazing, right? And so but he's 37. He's got 2 goals. It feels like he could have even more, right? It's like he's exactly the same player he always was, right? Like give him half a chance, and he's probably going to score. And it's like, I mean, God, like imagine if. I don't need to keep negging these guys. But imagine if Morgan Rogers and Darwin were just able to hang out, shadow like a work training program. If they could just shadow, Vardy for a week,
just like rotting their gut with so much Red Bull and Skittles.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. It might only work for him, really. It's like that. Yeah, it's like someone's got like a weird style at like in your office, right? And it's like they're kind of disorganized when they deliver, and you're like, well, it works for him. Yeah, exactly. I don't like it, but it works for him.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that are there any other captain options besides those 2? Yeah, maybe Macca. I think that you know how much I love Dwight McNeil.
So,
goal and assist this weekend.
What's the deal? People are now like sniffing around Everton. How does that performance? While the McNeil performance was really strong. No shots at him, but what Everton are doing this season is just a disaster class, and I don't think I could justify going near them.
Well, no. I mean, I think it would just be the. Having just Wildcard, I have to say I really was not tempted to have. I mean, they do have a nice run. I mean, Dwight McNeil is probably fine. It's just the problem is like Dwight McNeil is like a pretty. I forgot I was sharing my screen here, but just out of curiosity, I'll pull up Dwight McNeil here. I mean, he's a pretty known commodity, right? It's not like he's been around for many years now. Yeah. And I mean, this is what if we count this like 1 minute that he played in 2018, let's not count that. We'll just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is now his 7th year in the Premier League, right? Yeah. So I don't know that he's necessarily like leveled up in terms of, what we should expect from him going forward.
I guess I should reset what I said there about Everton, because fantasy is not always about the scoreboard. It's not about the end result. You'd be happy to have DCL. Right. You'd be happy to have Dwight McNeil after this game week, even though Everton continue to drive off of a cliff. So, I guess it's a little more nuanced when it comes to fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the more and less, weirdly. So, all right, let's get to a couple of questions here, Brandon. Amar B says, which preseason hypes can we debunk now that we're 10% into the season? Gotta be 10% into the season? I guess we are. He says, I'm looking at you guys. Barco left. So I think Gordon, what do we think? Is the Gordon hype? I think if Gordon owners, yourself included, must be looking to hit the eject button there, right?
It's not been fun. There was an interesting moment though when, and shout out to our friend Rune in the YouTube chat who mentioned that Isak got a poke in the eye at the very end of the first half. So that might have something to do with the injury. But when Isak came off at halftime, Anthony Gordon was moved into the number 9 slot. He was playing forward basically, and that's yeah.
Got it. So the appeal is that if Isak continues to not be able to see, we might get something out of Gordon. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting one. Gordon could go off. Like he has leveled up in the way that McNeil hasn't necessarily leveled up. I do think when Gordon got that move from Everton to Newcastle, everyone was like, okay, but I don't really understand this. And he's risen to the occasion. He's putting great performances for England. So, but the fantasy returns have been garbage. Yeah. And that is very frustrating. I mean, it does make me look at Manchester United as well, that they were much hyped, sort of like coming into the season thinking, they're making some interesting sort of like smart signings for once. And De Ligt came in and looked very feisty this weekend, but still they can't, they're struggling to score goals and be at that like top 6 level squad. So I think like we can definitely debunk any like Bruno, Garnacho, can't even get a start.
Yeah, I think the encouraging thing from a Man United fan perspective is at least they are integrating a lot of players that are interesting and young, and like I actually think as frustrating as it must be for them right now, like I actually think there's a lot of I don't know, like they're sort of it's funny because I was talking earlier about how there's like, I would say the Man United fans are the ones who actually do kind of embrace the pessimism like more than anybody else. I think the first like 10 years post Ferguson there was a lot of hope, and then recently they're like, I don't know, I don't know anymore.
I guess Amad Diallo is that like optimistic player for United right now, and as a fantasy pick, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no one that you'd like. There's just no one
doing more than Morgan Rogers is.
Well, everybody is. He has like Morgan Rogers literally no returns so far in this season. Yeah, I mean, I think, Kobe Mainu, I think is again not a player like I'm recommending, but like he's, because he hasn't. I mean, he might be like a little too deep, but like he's a really good player as well, and like so. But I don't know. Like I don't know. Yeah, but anyway, I don't think there's anything.
We don't need to name guys.
Yeah, why did we start talking about Man United? Yeah, exactly. All right, so Isak. I mean, Isak is quality. Like it's just that I don't know. Like him, like I don't think he's overhyped or anything like that. It's like I'd be very surprised if by the end of the season he didn't have 20 goals, right, or something very close to it.
Just not worked out for Newcastle. Like game week 1, Schär got that ridiculous red card against Berenson Diaz, and that Southampton match ended up being like not really a big fantasy affair. And then Isak comes off with this freak poke in the eye situation against Wolves. So it's been really, we just haven't gotten the right scenario for Isak thus far.
Yeah. Amazing for Schär to come out and what a season for him, So I think that it's I don't think like he's overhyped. I just think like it hasn't really worked out with him. I certainly feel more confident in Isak than I do in Gordon. Let's see who else is on Amar's list.
Guardiola.
Gvardiol. I mean, didn't even start this weekend. Probably, I don't really know. I'm not sure if that was if that was like kind of. Well, it's still hard to say because Rodri didn't start either, right? And so I feel like we still don't kind of know what's going on there. I was surprised to see Lewis start over him in the left back spot, but this is my. It's just like the whole thing. I'm just like I don't. Yeah, exactly. I don't want any part of anyone that isn't Haaland on that squad, unfortunately. And even Ederson. I mean, if Ederson were 4.5 million, sure, right? But but he's never going to be anywhere close to that cheap. Let's see who else. Munoz. Well, sadly Munoz
it's over for him.
Unfortunately, could turn around, of course, but not looking great. And then Raul Jimenez scored too, so it's like it's even it's a little scary there for him. Guehi. I mean, I can almost put him in the Isak camp where it's like Guehi is a really good player and he has been a totally reasonable, perfectly fine kind of fourth defender in fantasy in the past, right? And that's kind of where I would still put him. Like
What is going on with the
fine.
Palace team and the Palace defense?
I don't know why did they let like a bunch of the best players go, Brandon? Like, riddle me that. And like, why and a center back like right before the season started?
They were just so fun. It's like that buccaneering aspect of them under Glasner seems to have gone away weirdly. Will it come back?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, we kept thinking it would with De Zerbi, remember, at Brighton, and it never did. So I don't know. We'll see. And then Konsa, I don't know what to say about that. I mean,
I think Aston Villa's midfield is Onana has had some really stellar moments, and he's a great player, but I think they've got a lot of work to still do in order to control the games. And I wasn't really impressed with the midfield during that match this weekend against Everton.
Yeah, I mean, this was the worry, I guess, right? Is when Douglas Luiz left, that it was going to kind of make them maybe like a little less like rock solid to the middle. They've gotten away with it more or less so far, I suppose. I mean, they did lose at home to Arsenal, but conceding 2 in the first half to Everton.
They just seemed a little great. I don't know if insipid is the right word. Just kind of like weak, to put it in the Simeone terms of like no cojones from this Villa side this weekend.
Yeah. And, I don't know. I mean, they did come back and win though, so give credit where it's due, I suppose. Everybody. I mean, it's everybody spots Everton 2 goals because they know that the next 3 are coming.
Make this fun for everybody.
The pattern for everyone this season. All right. So, we talked about Jimmy's question about things you're enjoying in FPL so far. I like the way we kind of ended up on that question though, which is basically try to find one thing. It's like one fantasy thing each week, one thing that brought you a little bit of joy. John Clovis says, well, okay, here we go. This is another Newcastle question. I guess this is really where a lot of people are, though, right? Because a lot of people went heavy on Newcastle, and the reason I added this though is because of his what he was asking here at the end. He says I went heavy on Newcastle with Burn, Gordon, and Isak, but none have been that great. I think that's true. Like we've had a couple of returns from everybody, I guess. But with a hard fixture coming up, do I need to sell them all and suck up a -8? So the reason I added this, Brandon, was because to me, my feeling is if you're considered a -8 this far into the season and you still have your wild card, I would go ahead and just play the wild card. I don't really like, especially because game week 7 makes a lot of sense, or game week 6 makes a lot of sense for wild cards already. I would just do it a week early, and I think it's fine. And I think there's, I do think that like there's a very good chance that Saka gets some kind of return this weekend, right? He has literally every single game week so far this season. And there's no reason to think that he wouldn't, right? I mean, he's going to play the full 90 most likely, unless it's a bloodbath.
I love that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, if Arsenal are going to do something, he's probably going to be at the center of it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
but with a triple Newcastle, I find just like getting rid of them, like Andy Dufresne, Shawshank Redemption style, like dropping little pebbles, little gravel in the yard, a little bit of Newcastle.
A time. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Just drop one guy in the yard,
bits here and there. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. Yeah. So yes, I think it's kind of I think that I think I'm with you there. I would not drop them all, and if you really decided that and also like the Fulham match is not great, but it's not a horrible match. Like I think there's a pretty good chance they score. Like who do you think is a better start this weekend? I think I know the answer, but I'll ask anyway. Anthony Robinson at home or William Saliba / Gabriel away to Man City?
I guess it's Robinson because he's just getting so far forward and sort of being a part of the attack, whereas we know what we're getting with Saliba. So it does feel like Saliba's bang on for a 2-pointer this weekend.
It feels like both are going to concede, but
totally.
There's
something about a little bit more fun. Well, it depends on your taste. If you enjoy sort of like imperious headers and a well kept high line, or go with Saliba. If you like marauding left backs, go with Robinson.
I also brought Ipswich's Greaves in on my wild card. The only defender who got a return, but of course he was third on my bench this week. And would you start? I don't think I'll actually do this, but it would be tempting to start him over both of those players, and because Ipswich play away to Southampton, and that match has some strong nil vibes to it, doesn't it?
Would I do it?
Yeah.
I don't know if I would, but I will say it does sound fun.
It does sound fun.
If you're not going to play Greaves in this match, and I guess you don't have a player like Greaves because you're ever going to play him.
Right.
But Southampton,
4 million fifth defender, but it's not bad. Yeah. If they were hosting Southampton, he'd be an auto start, I think, this week.
Here's the thing with Southampton, though. Like, Ramsdale doesn't have a reputation for being great in the air. Plus, Jack Stevens got a dumb red card. Like, the Southampton defense is a bit weakened. I wonder if Greaves is a good shout for a set piece goal against Southampton.
Well, and what's fun is they I don't know if everybody knows this, but one thing they do in the Premier League is it's a full, when they reverse the fixtures the second half of the season, every fixture in a game week is the fixture they play in the reverse fixture. So I know, Brandon, that there will be a week when Arsenal and Man City play where Ipswich will be hosting Southampton. So I will have my chance to start Greaves over my Arsenal.
I love that you're committing right here on this episode of
to game week 34. I'm gonna have exactly just to stay true to my word here.
Love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap things up with a couple final thoughts, Brandon. How about this? If you could only watch one match this weekend, what match would that be?
Spurs Brentford feels like a fun one. Ooh, these are
feels like you pulled that one out of a hat. Like, that's a shocking answer.
I don't know. Like, it's kind of fun to bag on Spurs, and they've got their issues, but they have so many good players, and when they're playing well, they can be really fun. And the same could be said of Brentford. Now, I'm curious about Brentford because Mbomo is also on my short list of players to get in the next few weeks. And he, like, similar to Anthony Gordon, was moving central after Vissa came off at the halftime. So what kind of how does Mbomo fit into a Vissa-less Brentford? And then you've also got Fabio Carvalho, who's not seen a ton of minutes and is a really interesting attacking player for Brentford. And so there's a lot of scouting to do in this match.
Okay. All right. You've convinced me that there's something there. I think the West Ham Chelsea match, I think, could be interesting just because West Ham have it's not really like even a fantasy thing, but I'm just sort of interested in how this match shakes out. It's a little bit of a, I mean, it's a I suppose it's a South London derby in a way. I mean, they're not that far from each other. You and I saw West Ham and Chelsea when we were in London last time.
Yeah, I guess Chelsea are West London by the letter of the law.
They are.
I'm sure there's enough animosity there.
Yeah,
some energy.
Yeah, people are like throwing things at their phone right now as they hear that. But I think Crystal Palace Man United could be a fun one. That is the final match on Saturday. It is the 12:30 US, 5:30 UK match. I think that genuinely a difficult match to handicap, I would say, right? I think a lot of results are on the table here. Like, it feels like the kind of match that could absolutely, like, a 0-0 does not feel on the table. Like, it feels like a 3-2 one way or the other feels very possible in this one. Unfortunately for us Dean Henderson owners, but I think maybe Eze does something. I think interesting. Like, there was some drama about penalties with Eze and Mateta, but then I was glad to clarify after the.
Was Eze trying to?
There was, and Mateta was kind of like, "This is my pen," and they scored, so it's hard to argue with the result. But there was a little bit of drama there, and so I don't know. It feels like maybe I don't know. It feels like Eze is one of those players who's due for like a big explosion, and so maybe it happens in this match. I think it'll be a fun one though. And I mean, obviously you have Man City hosting Arsenal on Sunday, but what's the fun in picking that as our one match? Like, that's the obvious. I feel like whenever we say one match to watch this weekend, there is the completely obvious match, and then there's the kind of other, like the fun other ones. And the fun other ones are why you do fantasy at all, right? It's like we were talking about earlier. If you didn't play fantasy, you would probably find a reason to say yes to that lunch plan with your spouse, right? But because of fantasy, you can be like, I'm sorry, I've got to see whether Selhurst Park can be a fortress on Saturday.
My wife asked me, we were out having dinner this weekend, and she was like, so like you try to watch all the games. I'm like, yeah, I love it. She's like, you love it? I'm like, yeah, it's like my favorite thing to do. And she was kind of like flabbergasted, just like, wow, that's a thing that you just like love doing. And this is
like our 10 years doing this. Does you think you just like the like tiny amount of like ad revenue that we get from
it's just part of my work.
Totally mercenary. Yeah. This is a true labor of love. That's why you should be supporting the podcast on Patreon, by the way. Patreon.com/always cheating to support this quixotic labor of love that is this podcast. So all right, I think we can end things there, Brandon. If I had to, I guess we can do the X dog at him too. Which player do I think has that dog in him this week? Okay. Actually, I've got a good one. Leaf Davis, the Leafinator, Mr. Assist himself.
Yeah, the leaf blower.
The leaf blower. I think that he blows his way into some kind of attacking return away to Southampton. I know I said this. Well, let's just say return, because I did say that a 0-0 was on the table there. So I think the floor for Leaf Davis is 5 points on Saturday.
I'm going with Nkuku. I think Nkuku is going to be. I think he starts. I think he's going to demand minutes. Just like that was such a well taken goal, and the entry pass from Sancho was great too. So I like the looks of him against West Ham.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. It's like you can see. I mean, maybe it's like a souped up version of the Forest thing we were talking about before. It's like you can see a version of this team that's really good. Yeah. It's just like whether they can. I mean, the real question is whether they can shed the people who it's not working for, right? You know, like the which I guess they kind of have done, right? Like
Maresca seems like
has Mudryk played his last match, you know, totally. Not played, but like it started at least.
Yeah,
you know? Yeah.
I think Maresca's got the right attitude, just in terms of just making hard decisions and being unafraid of being a jerk about it. So I could see it happening for them this season.
All right, do you have an X dog in him for game week 5?
Yeah, we're going with Nkuku.
Right. I'm sorry. You said that already. Yep. Sorry about that.
I don't want to go back on that pick.
Yeah. It'd be funny if you forgot you said that. Like I forgot you said it, and you just came with a brand new one, like on the spot. That would have been
John McGinn. I was also thinking of John McGinn.
Yeah. McGinn. Yeah, we really heard he's overdue for an outside the box, screamer. So. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back on Thursday with a pod for Patreons. Once again, if you want to support the podcast, and we'd love it if you did, you can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. If you can't support the podcast right now for any reason, whatever that might be, we'd also really appreciate a review, 5-star review, or just you can follow us. We're on YouTube now, so you can follow us there. You can I'll have my Substack game week notes up Monday or Tuesday. I'm still kind of trying to figure out. I want to get consistent about it. Tuesday might work best for me, but regardless, we'll have that up. So that's alwayscheating.substack.com is where you can get that. But again, the reviews or the Patreon are the big things.
Absolutely. And as always, we'd like to thank our highest level Patreon supporters, the producers. Truly couldn't do it without you. Thanks, Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, Dave Wagner-Lodahl, our buddy Chris Howell, Andy Penn, Nick Wright, Lazarus Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Bobbas Kuhn, Ron Frost, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, Dan Parsons, Terrence O'Donnell, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, As It Does It, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Craig Jackson, Caleb Robbie, Brian Clark, Thomas Tislov, Fro Jacobson, The Saint, Gareth H., Shalin F. Kadakia, Rishi Nigam, Noah and Louise, Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Matthew Skinner, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, Rune Sandberg, the 3 Jims, James Murray Wood, James C., James Holland, and of course, Jack. There you have it, Josh. I think we need rest and relaxation this week, so we're back fit for game week 5.
That's true. Exactly. Lots going on this week, though, from a footballing perspective.
Midday meetings abound.
That's true. I hadn't thought about that. I got a lot going on. I know I can't even fake a dentist appointment because I have an actual one tomorrow. So it's a bummer. Yeah, 2 in a week. I'd have to invent a root canal. I'd have to go so deep into the web of lies, that I would worry about stumbling on my own. Totally. I don't want to get too George Costanza about all of this. So, all right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back on Thursday. You can find us on the Discord, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.